So here you go. This is from the Wonderlic people. They're a commercial company that makes general cognitive ability tests, and it's often used by corporations, even though it's actually illegal. It's actually illegal to use IQ tests, but the Wonderlic doesn't promote themselves as testing IQ. I think it's general cognitive ability, which is the same thing, but whatever. The SATs, the GREs, the LSATs, all of those are IQ tests. So now they're more crystallized than fluid, and we'll get to that in a minute, but crystallized knowledge is what you accrue across time. So you could say that fluid intelligence is what programs your brain. It fills it with facts, let's say. It fills it with knowledge. And then, but you can get an estimate of your intelligence by sampling your domain of factual knowledge. And the reason for that is that, well, obviously, the better the programmer, the better the content. And so what that also means is that you could, if your prefrontal cortex was damaged later in life, your fluid IQ could plummet, but your crystallized IQ remain more or less intact. So even though they're not different, one produces the other, and then once the producer has produced, then the producer can disappear and you still got the encoded knowledge. So at least that's how it looks to me. So, okay, so how smart do you have to be different things in life? Well, if you have an IQ of 116 to 130, which is 85th percentile and above, so it's one person in 8 up to one person in 130, I believe is 85, 90, 95, is it 95? I think it's 95. One person in 8 to one person in 20. Then you can be a attorney, a research analyst, an editor, an advertising manager, a chemist, an engineer, an executive manager, etc. That's not the high end for IQ, by the way. You know, that it can go up, well, it can go up indefinitely, although there's fewer and fewer people as it goes up. So if you want to be the best at what you're doing, bar none, then having an IQ of above 145 is a necessity, and maybe you're pushing 160 in some situations, and maybe that's making you one person in 10,000 or even one person in 100,000. And then also, to really be good at it, you probably have to be reasonably stress tolerant and also somewhat conscientious. So you know, people, when you think, well, why is it that smart people are at the top of dominance hierarchies? And the answer to that in part is because they get there first. Right? I mean, everything's a race, roughly speaking, and the faster you are, the more likely you are to be at the forefront of the pack, and intelligence in large part is speed. That's not all of it is. So if you're moving towards something difficult rapidly, the faster people are going to get there first. So IQ of 110 to 115, so that's 85th to 73rd to 85th percentile. Copywriter, accountant, manager, sales analyst, general manager, purchasing agent, registered nurse, sales account executive. If you look at universities, the smartest people they're above this. Who are the smartest people at university? What do you think? Mathematicians, physicists and mathematicians, right. I could tell you who's on the other end, but I won't. Yeah, I'd like to though. Anyways, okay. Going down now 103 to 108 is slightly above average, right? 60th to 70th percentile. Store manager, bookkeeper, credit clerk, lab tester, general sales, telephone sales, accounting clerk, computer operator, customer service rep, technician, clerk, typist. So you see at this level, people have some technical skill and some ability to deal with complex things. Okay, that's dead average. 100 is average. Dispatcher in a general office, police patrol officer, receptionist, cashier, general clerical, inside sales clerk, meter reader, printer, teller, data entry, electrical helper. 95th to 98. Machinist, food department manager, quality control checker, security guard, unskilled labor, maintenance, arc welder, die setter, mechanic. Good IQ range for relatively qualified tradespeople. 87 to 93. Messenger, factory production worker, assembler, food service worker, nurse's aide, warehouseman, custodian, janitor, material handler, packer. Now, what you're starting to see is that as you move down the hierarchy, the jobs get simpler, they're more likely to be assigned by other people, or they're repetitive. Because what IQ predicts to some degree is how rapidly you can learn something, but once you've learned it, it doesn't predict necessarily how well you do at it. And so the more repetitive jobs people with lower IQs are more suited to more repetitive jobs. Under 87, is there something? Well, no. Right. That's a big problem. And it's something our society has not addressed at all. Jobs for people with IQs of less than 85 are very, very rare. So what the hell are those people supposed to do? It's like it's 15% of the population. What are they supposed to do? Well, we better figure it out, because one of the things that's happening too is that as the high IQ tech geeks get a hold of the world, the demand for cognitive power is increasing, not decreasing, right? You want to be a teller? Well, you know, those checkout machines, they're not so simple. You want to work at McDonald's? You think that's a simple job? You don't see robots working at McDonald's. And the reason for that is that what McDonald's workers do is too complex for robots to do. So this is a discussion that no one wants to have, but that's okay. It's still a problem, and it has to be dealt with. So the US government, I think I told you this at one point already, it's illegal to induct anyone into the US Army if they have an IQ of less than 83, right? It's about 10% of the population. Because the US Army, and they've been doing IQ testing since IQ testing began, because they want everybody they can possibly get into the Army, because in peacetime, they use it as a way of moving people up the socioeconomic ladder, and in wartime, well, obviously, you need as many soldiers as you can get your hands on. And so you're not going to be any pickier than you have to be. So when the US Army says it's illegal to induct anybody into the armed forces if they have an IQ of less than 83, then you know that they've done it for absolute necessity. Right? And when people have made a finding that contradicts what they want to hear, and they're doing it out of absolute necessity, you can be reasonably true that it's one of those facts that just won't bloody well go away. And so you might think, well, if there's nothing for someone with an IQ of less than 83 to do in the Army, what makes you think that there's something that they can do in the general population? And then the issue is, you know, because the conservatives will say, well, they should just work harder. It's like, sorry, that ain't going to fly. And the liberals will say, well, there's no difference between people anyhow, and you can just train people to do everything. And that's wrong. So they're both wrong, and they're seriously wrong. And the fact that neither side of the political perspective will take a good, cold, hard look at this problem means that we're going to increasingly have a structural problem in our societies, because we're complexifying everything so rapidly that you can't find employment unless you're intelligent. You guys are really going to face this, you know. Lawyers are disappearing like mad. And the reason for that is, you can look it up online. Increasingly, you can do things yourself if you're smart. And so, like, the working class people have been wiped out pretty nicely over the last 30 years by automation and various other things. It's the low end of the white collar class that's coming up next. So I'm not saying that lawyers are in the low end, but low end lawyers are in the low end of the white collar class. So there's still going to be plenty of positions for people who are creative and fast on their feet and super smart. In fact, those people are going to have all the money, and that's already happening to a great degree. You know, because if you're smart and you can use a computer, you're so smart it's just absolutely unbelievable, right? And if you can't use a computer, and lots of people, and I don't mean, you know, you can open Word. That isn't what I mean. I mean, maybe I mean you can program, and if you can't program, well, you're right at the next end. So if you haven't got that with you, you're going to be left behind.
What's going to happen then when that happens, when you have...
Oh, a lot of them will take Demerol. That's what's happening in the United States. Yeah, it's an opiate. Yeah, so there's a massive drug problem emerging in...
Under 83 or whatever,
yeah.
it's about 15% of the population.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, that is what's happening.
Seems like that percent of the population is going to increase.
Yes. Drugs. Yeah, drugs of abuse. Well, what is happening to a large degree is people drop out of the employment race. They get very depressed. They develop chronic pain problems, especially if they're men, because chronic pain and depression are very much the same thing. And then they subsist on opiates, which are subsidized by Medicaid in the US. I'm not kidding about this. This is exactly what's happening. What else is going to happen to people for whom there's nothing to do? They have a terrible time, especially if they're conscientious. That's a good question. You know, the AI guys are pushing hard on this. Hey, what's the biggest employment category? Driver. Think about it. What's Tesla doing? What are all the AI guys working on as fast as they possibly can? Driverless cars. No problem, except that's the biggest employment category for men. So what are those guys going to do? Yeah, they're going to sit home and, you know, be miserable with their wives and take opiates because they have chronic pain problems. Right. nasty. And you might think, well, could they think up something else to do? Well, if you have an IQ of 83 or less, you're not going to be doing a lot of thinking about something else to do. You know, that isn't how it works, because you're more of a, you're an act person, not a thinking person, roughly speaking. You know, and so if you have a task at hand, especially if you're conscientious, you can diligently go about it. But, you know, I've tried to train people with IQs of 80 and less to do what I would consider tasks that one of you could learn to do in 10 minutes and never make a mistake again. And it's like tens of hours with bare minimum mastery of the tasks. So, yeah, it's an ugly situation, no doubt about it.